Morning, world. I'm Steve Robb, the host of Pod and Roku TV's World Politics. On this show, we talk about game changing events in an increasingly turbulent world, politically and economically, here in the United States and around the world. I'm honored to host this show, and I'll be here only for about 12 minutes today as I have a conflict work related, but I will be here next week for both shows, and we have a very, very special panel for you. So please tune in wherever you are in the country and the world to get a perspective of what's going on in the world, because boy, the world really is changing. Today, I want to open up my monologue just on some basic things going around the world to kind of set the menu at the table to discuss today. First of all, I just want to let everyone know that Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is accusing the Indian government of an assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, a Sikh leader, in June. Mr. Trudeau has raised concerns, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi is denying these allegations, but it's not often we see rivalries between India and Canada on such issues. Russian drones have attacked Lviv, setting an industrial warehouse on fire. Two of the foreign ministers of China and the United States are spending some time in security talks in Moscow with Sergei Lavrov, the Russian counterpart, by hailing the country's commitment to a more just world order, which is very interesting. Iran released 5 Americans in a prisoner swap mediated by Qatar in exchange for the hostages, all whom are American Iranian deal nationals. They're all Iranian American nationals. The Biden administration unblocked 56 billion of Iran's oil revenue, which had been held in South Korea since sanctions had hit in 2018. We're going to talk about this hostage swap, and we have Adam Lamparello today with us. Love to get his opinion about that. President Joe Biden's son, who's in a lot of hot water, is now suing the Internal Revenue Service. The tax agency had violated his privacy, and America's Army found the debris of an F-35 fighter jet that was missing on Sunday. Kind of surprising that our country would be missing an F-35 fighter jet. As we prepare for next week's show, I will let you all know that I had a fascinating conversation last week with John T. Chambers, the former CEO and chairman of Cisco, the chairman of the U.S.-India Partnership Forum. We're going to be trying to bring him on the show, but he shared the insights on the future of India's economy, which he predicts will be the #1 economy in the world. We talked about artificial intelligence and its change on the world and the economy. We talked about his perspective as a former CEO of a global company, Cisco, and now an investor, what he thinks artificial intelligence is going to do to our economy, to our trajectory. But most importantly, the opportunity to create new jobs, as thousands and thousands of jobs would be displaced much sooner than we thought. And so this is going to really change the world, and I think we have to talk about it, world politics and what can be done. We're not going to do that today, but let's get started. We are today honored to have a really great program today with you. We have Adam Lamparello, from a law professor from Georgia Southern, right?
Adam? Georgia College.
Sorry, Georgia College. We have Mark Lee, the Wizard of Oz, and others are going to be joining. So, guys, I kind of set the table today. I'm not here with long. I think we'll start with, since we have the professor with us today, and I know he's not a big Joe Biden fan, but we try to be respectful in our differences here in the show. Hostage swap deal, loosening up the 56 billion of oil. Adam, what do you think about this?
Well, I wish I could speak more intelligently on it, but I'm not too familiar with the situation right now.
Yeah, I know. Well, with these deals are happening all the time. I mean, I think I myself, Adam, I think you're not alone in that. I mean, the fact of the matter is that these hostage deals are going on all the time, and quite frankly, it's a bit concerning that we don't really know much, right? I mean, it's almost like the intent of the government is to not know it.
Steve, we've been going through these for a while, and I know that Adam is a student of the history and everything, but I want to say that there were some trades that involved in Noriega way back in the time and all, and that was around some arms deals. And of course, they had the trade around Brittany Griner not that long ago, a basketball player, and we've definitely had trades that have existed. So sometimes we are trading, as one of our other shows said, it's not like a person-to-person trade. Sometimes we're trading goods for the people, and sometimes I guess we're trading the power for the people or the access as well, because that's been going on for decades, even not centuries. So that's what I was just thinking as you were talking, and maybe that's just part of government and as normal and everything. And speaking of government as normal, but not so normal, and just to get off a little fun, and then I definitely want to hear Adam's thoughts about government as normal and whether there is such a thing. But we do have this running poll. Adam will be joining the poll candidates next week, or actually later on this week, because I'll be creating that poll either tomorrow or Thursday. But in the poll that we created first, we have the candidates running, and Adam, you'll be glad to know Oscar the Grouch is still winning. So he's got 59% of the vote. Nikki Haley is a strong second with 21%, and then our very own Lee Newton Rhodes, who is actually in the background and everything, is coming up with 10%, tied with Ron DeSantis. So Lee Newton Rhodes is up there, right up there with Ron DeSantis. But right now, Oscar the Grouch is winning. So what is our thoughts about Oscar the Grouch winning and people wanting Oscar the Grouch to be the president of the United States?
I think that's fantastic. I think Oscar the Grouch brings the kind of skepticism and sincerity that we need in a politician. So he has my full support. And as far as, hostages go, I remember Iran-Contra back in about 1988.
Right.
I guess the question for me is, does it serve America's interests? I don't look at it from a moral perspective because I don't really think it's capable of any really moral clarification. Does it serve our interests to engage in these type of deals? And if it serves our national interests, we should do it. And I think that, again, looking at it from a moral perspective kind of can impede doing what is best for the country and their self-interest. And I think that should be the primary factor that governs our decisions.
Yep.
Yeah,
Hey,
I think
Nick,
you're
we
right.
got
We have
Nick with
Nick
us as
Paladiva.
well.
We have Nick Paladiva joining us, and so Nick, welcome to the show. Well, I think one of the issues that I'd like to dive into and is at a high level. We're going to talk more about my fireside chat lunch with John Chambers. For those of you who don't know, he ran a $47 billion company. So in 20 years, he took Cisco from 70 million to 47 billion, acquired 180 companies. Today, and worked with 40 world leaders, including the Prime Minister of India. But the one thing he said to me that concerned me is that India has been able to take a government that was so corrupt and slow and inefficient, even where my parents came from there in the 1960s, to now being a very innovative government. I was quite amazed to know that they've already connected 700 million to the internet, 1.2 billion have a digital identity, 60% of the population is under 35 years of age. And 87 unicorn startups, in India just 5 years ago, there were hardly any. They're billion-dollar companies. So, Adam, do you think that, I know you tend to be a little bit more conservative, do you just think that the government of the United States has just become so inefficient that countries like India are seeing this as an opportunity and are moving faster to be, and what Chambers says, number one?
I think that the government is not only inefficient, but I think corporations don't want to be here because it's too costly to be here. That's why I think Trump was smart to reduce the corporate tax rate. And why not go to other countries where it's cheaper to do business, more profitable, and where you can hire workers at a lower wage? I think ultimately it's capitalism writ large. And I think the United States makes it harder for people to do business here, for corporations to succeed, and particularly from the ground up. And that's why I think you're seeing other countries capitalize on these opportunities when the United States could have, but because of its regulatory scheme and its tax structure, does not.
That's a great answer. And I don't know, Nick, if
Hey,
you have any questions.
I got a question for you, Steve, because I know you're only here for a short amount of time and everything, but
I got to
and it
about
comes down to
5:20.
world politics. It comes down to world politics and all along those lines. But how much should we be concerned about this tit for tat that is going on? And maybe Sasha will join us either on another edition of this show, or maybe he'll even join us today. But how much should we be concerned about this tit for tat going on between Canada and India, where they are saying that Canada is accusing India for being involved in the assassination of a Sikh activist on its soil, and that's triggered a growing spat with Ottawa, which is a territory in Canada, a major territory, and New Delhi, both expelling senior diplomats and sending relations between the two countries plunging. So is this something that you are concerned about? And do you think that India should be concerned about this as well? It's just wondering your thoughts about this, because it does seem something that we are seeing, not just in that country, but other countries as well.
Well, I mean, first of all, it's weird. Once again, Professor Leporello, I don't really have enough information on the inside to know why India would be involved in this assassination. A little bit odd that this was, don't really see this as being a robbery. Obviously, Canada has intelligence organizations, so I don't think Prime Minister Trudeau would be making this out of thin air. So I think that it's really up to the governments to look at the data and see whether it's true. And,
hold on a second. I got to ask, and Nick, mate, you can jump in on me. Haven't we been meddling in other countries for years? I'm thinking about, and it's not just us. I'm thinking about Cuba. I'm thinking about China and Africa, and I'm thinking about a number of other things. So should we be surprised that countries are backing one form of activism or another going on? I'm sure that there are people backing even some of our activist groups here in the United States that are of that they are supporting, whether that's unions, whether that's some of the far right groups, or say some of the far left groups. Are we really surprised that the various countries are meddling in other countries' affairs, particularly if they are thinking that they are activists that they agree with, and all along those lines? So I think this has been going on for decades.
Mark, are you trying to talk about us overthrowing the Iranian government and installing the Shah of Iran? Or are you talking about what we did down in Nicaragua? Or are you talking about us when we invaded Iraq and got rid of Saddam Hussein? So which dictator that we overthrew that you have an objection to?
No, there's a couple of them. We could go on a couple of them.
All of them.
We can also
You
add.
object to that?
We can
Adam,
also
why do you
add.
object to
Hold on a second. It's not just us, because there was a
Why
little
would
small country
Adam object
that
to
existed that I think London or England went and invaded them, and it lasted for like all of about 2 hours, I believe. It was called the Falklands, and then of course there was the Panama Canal and all in that space. So I mean, there's been meddling
that's
in
what
country
the
affairs
powers
for a while,
is.
but not just by us. We can go to France, we can go to England, we can go to a number of places.
So what's the big beef? So India's flexing their superpower muscles. So what?
Well, it's certainly true that the United States interferes in other countries' affairs. Probably the biggest election interference is by the United States. But the worst part is overthrowing these good dictators. There was no reason to overthrow Saddam Hussein. He was a fine man who in 1989 posed with Jim Baker and Ronald Reagan. The Ayatollah was doing a fine job of stabilizing Iran before we installed the Shah and destabilized the country. All that we did was destabilize those regions, and the nerve of us to think we could impose our values on the good people of Iran and Iraq. Well, we saw how that turned out. So the United States.
Hey, Adam, did we just?
I don't know if Adam's being facetious or he's actually telling the truth.
No,
I am
it's not the
telling
truth.
the truth because the Middle East
Did we depose of a government that existed and everything, and then we were glad that we deposed them? We didn't like the fact that they were running around buying a whole bunch of shoes and everything. And then now that same family is back in control, because if I understand correctly, aren't the Marcos family back in control of the Philippines? And they were the ones that we disposed because we thought Imelda was buying too many shoes, among other things.
Yeah, and the problem is that when we do the things that we did in Iran and Iraq, we destabilize the region, and that's bad for us, and that's bad for the region. Look how we destabilized Iraq. Iraq was doing just fine under President Hussein, and under the Ayatollah, what did we do when we put the Shah in? We destabilized Iran, destabilized the Middle East, which is not good for us. And for what purpose?
What purpose is the same reason we're in Ukraine?
Just like they're meddling in Mr. Putin's affairs.
Adam, hello. The reason we're in Ukraine, there's a reason we're in Ukraine, is because if we're not in Ukraine, Putin's going to be in our backyard. I mean, it's really pretty simple, and it's been historically proven that crazy dictators, like there's this guy Adolf Hitler, and then of course there was Japan. They weren't going to stop. They have no problem breaking through other people's territories and intruding in people's lives and basically cutting
just
off.
Like we don't have a problem invading Iraq, not once but
They
twice.
They rape, they pillage, they cut off people's heads, they cut through their entails, their judge, jury, and deliver the execution. And
speaking of Judge, jury,
the
and
only way
executioner, do you
evil
think, and this is a
dominates
question for
is
everybody,
when
including
we
Steve,
can
do you think that
stand
there are
still. And we're
assassination
not going to
attempts
stand still.
that are sanctioned by governments? That's the accusation that's going
Funny how
on.
we don't interfere in many genocides around the world, but seem to just selectively do so when it benefits us. I mean, we
But is
totally
it just
criminalize-
us? Because I mean, the accusation, as I understand it, is that Canada was involved in the assassination of a Sikh activist because that person was living in Canada. So I'm thinking that they were thinking either that the assassin that there might have been a blind eye turned. I'll just leave it at that. Or whether they were directly involved or they just turned a blind eye when they were being assassinated and all in that space.
Well, Saudi Arabia did the same thing, and we turned a blind eye to that.
That's
You
my
know,
point.
so the thing is, assassinations take place. Just
let me make this my last point, and I think this is a conversation we can have next week. Is that, I think part of the problem is that yes, I agree with Adam. The United States does tend to start these wars. They call them never-ending wars. Let's not forget, since 9/11, 7,000 of our soldiers have died, 3 million deployed in the active military. Many are coming back now, but the bottom line is that we go in, invade a country like Afghanistan, and then we pull out thinking that, well, American troops were there, democracy is going to thrive and survive and flourish. And then the minute we pull out, the institutions of democracy are so weak, the Taliban goes in there and does this. Now, how many times have we said, well, they have a free election? Okay, they have elections in Russia. Come on. It's basically saying dictator Putin is in power again. And then when you try to question his power, you're assassinated, like what he did with Prigozhin, which we don't have proof of. And so the bottom line is that America, to have a good democracy, you need a strong government to prevent chaos, and you need a society that respects civil rights and liberties. And that's what makes America great. We disagree with it, but I can burn a flag in front of a man who spent his life giving his life for it, defending it, because that's my right as an American. I know many of us wouldn't agree with that, but it's my right, and I can do it, and I'm not going to be thrown in prison. I'm not going to be persecuted. I'm not going to be killed, right?
No,
but well, look at what's happening to Donald Trump. Those 4 indictments are political persecution 101. Maybe we're not assassinating him, but we're persecuting
That's what I was
him.
going to ask is, at what point, as I brought this up before, because there's an old saying, it's a kind of cliche-ish saying, but it's this notion of one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist, because this even comes down to what was going on with this gentleman from India, because apparently the Khalistan movement is outlawed in India and considered a national security threat by the government. A number of groups associated with the movement are listed as terrorist organizations under India's Unlawful Activities Act, which is UAPA. And I'm sure we have the same thing with like the Proud Boys, members of the New Black Panthers, and a number of others that might be viewed as terrorists. But are they all terrorists, or is that just our opinion of them? And
yeah, I've got to run, but I'll be back on next week. I probably call on the phone, but typically you don't like to do that. But thank you so much, Professor. Thanks for being here. Look forward to jabbing with you next week.
Okay.
Yep, yeah, he's got to bounce. But what is our thoughts? Because, like I said, Adam, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter.
That's certainly true. I mean, how do you think Japan views us after we dropped 2 atomic bombs on them? How do you think the Iraqis view us after we invaded their country twice and executed their leader? You don't talk about persecution. And now with Russia and Ukraine, I mean, Ukraine, how greedy they have become. I mean, they're given a country in 1991, and now they're trying to marginalize the Russians through NATO. Of course, Putin's going to attack. I mean, if another country was on the East Coast and threatening our borders, we'd do the same thing. The problem with the United States is we see it as so morally superior when, in fact, it isn't. It's the exact same thing. We're persecuting Donald Trump. We've invaded other countries. We've murdered other leaders. We've turned a blind eye to genocide. We're not morally superior. We're just in a power struggle based on our own self-interest.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll get Shaquille on, because apparently Australia has jumped into the India-Canada conversation as well, because a spokesperson for Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong said the country is also deeply concerned by the allegations. We are closely engaged with partners on developments. We have conveyed our concerns at senior levels to India, and that was a statement that they shared with CNN. We understand these reports will be particularly concerning to some Australian communities. The Indian diaspora are valued and important contributors to our vibrant and resilient multicultural society, where all Australians can peacefully and safely express their views. So they're saying that, hey, but I wonder how the Aborigines would feel about that, because I'm thinking that there might be some Aborigines that might be going like, oh, sure, the Indians can express their views, but are we allowed to express our views? Because I want to say that Australia has been having some conversations around the Aborigine rights and everything, if I'm remembering correctly. But like I said, Shaquille and them can go into more details, but I do know that that was recently in the news that they were trying to give them more rights, even though they are the original keepers of that particular land. So there might be a double standard going on.
Well, thanks for the garbage. Now you guys need to join the big boy table. And the big boy table works like this. There was a guy named Osama bin Laden. We went into Pakistan and killed him. Now, what gives America the right to do that? Well, here's what gives America the right to do it. We're part of the big boy table, so we have the right to do it. So India, if they have a dissident that they don't like, goes into foreign soil, just like we did, and they take them out. So I don't know why we're even bother having this conversation, other than the little boys all like to squeak, oh, no, it's wrong. Something bad happened. And in terms of the United States, might makes right. I mean, that's just the bottom line. We are a superpower. And yes, if we see things that we believe are against our interests and are evil to the world, such as Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine, we will support Ukraine and kick Putin's little rear back to Russia. And what Adam needs to realize is Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania could have all joined because they were part of the Soviet Union. If Russia's so great and wonderful, Adam, and you like them so much, why didn't they join in with Russia like they did years ago as part of Comecon? It's because Russia's not great. Russia is run by conmen, artisans, thieves, and terrorists. And that's one thing that is against the principles of the United States.
Hold on a second. Some people would argue that the United States is being run by conmen as well.
How insulting to Vladimir Putin. How dare you? Oh my gosh. I mean,
well, I'm afraid to go on an airplane in Russia now. And I used to be on airplanes in Russia. I don't know about you. But now I won't go on an airplane in Russia because a guy like Putin goes, we don't like what you said. And hence the plane goes down. And if that's the guy that you like, and if you say, hey, we're not going to do anything about that, Adam, then that's the world that you want to live in.
Hold on a second. Nick and Adam, I hear what you're saying, but I did have a question because Adam mentioned something earlier, and I know that it is very popular in the world. A lot of people talk about it and everything, but how close are we? Because you just mentioned earlier that you were part of a panel and all along those lines, but how close are we to actually living up to the creeds of the Constitution? Because you mentioned that you were at a constitutional event and everything. And I was just wondering whether you think that in the 21st century, we are close to the creeds of the Constitution. And two, should we be close to the creeds of the Constitution? Because there were entire groups. We know women were left out, minorities were left out, a number of others were left out when the Constitution was first created. They were added later and everything. But how close are we to the actual creeds of the Constitution in your mind as a constitutional scholar?
Not very close. And I'm glad that you asked that because Russia has a constitution too. And they talk about rights, but those rights are never really enforced. And for good reason. I'll get to that later. Here we have a constitution that talks about equal protection of the law and the 14th Amendment. Yet for years we were involved in segregation, which was, approved of in Plessy versus Ferguson, discrimination against women, various minority groups. We're no better than anybody else. And as far as Mr. Putin goes, apart from the fact that Moscow is beautiful and the Russian national anthem is glorious, I have no problem with Mr. Putin cracking down on people who are dissidents. I mean, after all, don't we do the same thing? Haven't we done the same thing for our entire history? And you guys all mentioned this First Amendment thing. Well, I'm no supporter of the First Amendment. I don't believe that we should be allowing many people to speak. I don't think racists, sexists, homophobic jerks should be allowed to speak. I don't think you should be allowed to use the N-word. I don't think you should be allowed to say things that are traumatic to and injurious to other people. So a dictatorship, especially a benevolent one, and people like Vladimir Putin are going to make their country a better place. And if you go to Russia and you interact with their citizens, what you're going to see is this. They're intelligent, they love their country, and they're happy. You can't say the same for the U.S.
Hey, hold on a second. This is for both of you. This is a question that actually came up.
Wait, hold a minute, Mark. Yeah. He hasn't been robbed and basically by people in Russia yet, because you haven't had the opportunity, those wonderful people, to basically rip you off yet. I have. So the thing is, all those people that you love, they're intelligent, they're wonderful, will rip you off in a New York minute.
Well, I
And they
would
did with
I
me,
would rip
and
you
they'll
off
do-
too because you're an
they'll do it with you,
American.
Adam, too. They'll do it with you too.
But you're an American. I'd rip you off too because you've interfered
Oh, I
in
see. I'm
their
guilty because
affairs
I'm an
for
American.
history.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And if
If I
that's
was
the
Russia,
case,
I
then
wouldn't
they
like
hate us.
America. If I was in
Okay.
Iraq, I wouldn't
Cool.
like Americans. Look what we did to these
Hey,
people.
cool.
Hey,
If
hold on a
they
second.
hate us,
Now
then they
meddling
don't.
in that
Hold on,
greedy
hold on.
Ukrainian.
No.
I mean, those Ukrainians are so
Hey, look,
greedy.
look.
No, hold on a second.
We'll
I've got a
give
quick
all
question
all
for
the
both of you, and this actually
F-16s
comes
they
back
want
to
in Ukraine.
politics and everything. Because well, one, we got the debate next week, but there is a constitutional gentleman. I think he's the founder of the Federalist Society, Stephen Calabresi, and he is saying that. And I know you're going to love to hear this, Adam, but he is saying that Trump is actually disqualified for being president. He said that a little more than a month ago, a law professor who found that Federalist Society, which is a conservative legal group, enthusiastically endorsed a new law review article arguing that Donald Trump was ineligible to be president. So he's saying that Trump is ineligible to be on the ballot, and each of the 50 states secretaries of state have an obligation to print ballots without his name on them, according to this professor who teaches at Northwestern University. And I think one or both of you have connections with Northwestern and all along those lines. But apparently last week he changed his mind. So now he's saying that maybe he is allowed to run, and it did not apply to Mr. Trump. So he's going back and forth.
That's
But
what law professors do. Law professors come out with outlandish ideas because they want to feel special and get their narcissistic supply. Usually they don't make any sense. That's why they're professors, not practitioners.
And how could he be so stupid? I would revoke if he was a professor somewhere. I'd revoke his appointment. Do you know why? Because this is too simple. Even an idiot chess player can figure this one out. Donald Trump, tell me, what is he guilty of right now? What is he guilty of? Nothing.
Nick's 100% right.
What crime has he been convicted of? Nothing. And in our country, you're innocent until proven guilty. So this law professor, or whatever he is, head of Federal Society, should resign, stick his head up his rear, and go home. And if they hired him at Northwestern, I would not send my kid to Northwestern University. That's
well.
Think
ridiculous. About that. Nick is 100% right. And think about
right, Adam and I agree for something.
Yes, we do. Maybe we'll go to Russia together. I mean, think about this. Yes, Northwestern is supposed to be a top 15 law school, and you have a professor saying this. I mean, look at Yale. Look at Stanford, where people shouted down a federal judge. Academia has become so ideologically uniform, and it's really become the opposite of diversity, and it's tragic. And I think when we talk about how Russia is, let's talk about the discrimination in this country against conservatives who can't get a position in academia to save their lives. Former President Donald Trump, who's being indicted solely for political purposes, okay, and an election that raised serious questions, and let's just leave it at that. So our country, not to mention how it interferes in other countries, doesn't interfere in some genocides, selectively picks others to interfere and destabilizes countries, kills leaders, and then of all things is trying to destabilize Russia and favor that greedy Ukraine that is trying to marginalize it the way it is. That prime minister in Ukraine, they said he was a former comedian. I don't think what he's doing is funny at all, and I support Russia.
Oh, we got a Russian wonderful person. Well, let me tell you about Donald Trump. Okay, we ran a poll, Adam, because I was curious, and I know Steve isn't here to defend himself, but I put Steve on the poll with Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Okay, who won the election? Well, I hate to tell Steve he lost, but Steve actually got 9% of the vote. Okay, this is a LinkedIn poll. We had 1,300 people participate. Steve got 9%. Joe Biden got like 30%. Trump overwhelmingly won the election, like 60%. So people who think that he will not be the next president, I'm tending to agree with you as much as it's against my heart and my wishes and my brain that he might win the presidency of the United States. There's a good chance because right now, all the polls I've done, he is leading. He is beating the bejeevers out of Biden, and the Democrats are asleep at the wheel. They don't know where they're going. They are going to lose. And Trump.
Hold on a second.
Why would you?
Adam,
and you know why they're losing
all along those lines? Because one thing that he's doing, because we talked about this last week. One thing that he's doing is he has already declared that on next Wednesday he will not be attending the debate, but instead he's going to go speak to a group of folks that are powerful, whether you like them or not. But he said he's going to go speak to the auto workers. So if anything, that might actually be winning them some votes, because instead of being at the Republican debate, he's going to actually go and speak to the auto workers that are part of the union.
He's the next Grover Cleveland. He will win the presidency of the United States. And you know whose fault it is? It's the Democrats. They refuse to give, these old people refuse to give up their seats. One thing that Romney did, which was correct, he goes, I'm old, we need young people in, goodbye. But look at Dianne Feinstein. I still want to be here. Nancy Pelosi, I need to be there. Joe Biden, what is he doing here? And do they help their young people like Steve Rao? No, they don't. Do they help any young people? No, they don't. They could care less because they're power mongers. And they're going to.
I can't have you just leave that at the Democrats.
So get ready for
those Republicans, and they're very white-haired as well.
I'm utterly shocked. I mean, Nick, of all people who should support Trump, it would be you. He's going to make you even wealthier. You're going to pay even lower taxes. I mean,
lower taxes and huge debt.
You can join two country clubs with under Trump.
You know, none of them want to tell the truth, including your friend Donald Trump. You know, we're looking at a country that is fiscally way insolvent, like 33 trillion now in the national debt. It went up since we last talked. It was only 31 trillion. Now it's 33 trillion and continually to go.
Well, everybody
Part
has
of it is because of spending. We spend money on stupid things, you know. Medicare is going broke. Social Security is going broke. Internet for all. This made everybody feel good, but it's $50,000 per house in the middle of Albuquerque, New Mexico. You know, we have too many crazy Democratic spending things. And on top of it, we have the crazy Republicans who won't raise taxes for the wealthy people. So between that, you've got a country that's basically making the grandkids, great-grandkids insolvent, and they don't care. And that's what's happening right now in the United States.
Well, if you want to address that, then I think in 1996 with the line item veto, that would have been a great way to reduce wasteful government spending, but the Supreme Court in Clinton versus New York invalidated it. But if you want to really reduce spending, you have to have entitlement reform, and that begins with Social Security. I mean, why are men at 65 years old who are worth $20 million getting a Social Security check?
Oh, I'm with you on that. You're absolutely correct. And you do need.
Hold on a second. I've got to take the opposite approach to this. Why, if you are still legitimately able to do your job and you are very much effective at doing your job, should you be forced out of a board? Because I can tell you that almost 12 or 13 years, let's see, I'm 61, so about 11 years ago, my mom was serving on a board of a major bank here in North Carolina, and they had her leave the board because she had aged out, because they had this stupid age requirement. And I can tell you that she's probably more competent than some of the bank tellers that exist right now and everything. So why do we have these stupid age rules and everything as well?
Well, they have them on pilots. You can't be 75 years old and pilot a commercial aircraft. There are certain jobs that you shouldn't do because of age-related issues.
Well, I mean, I can. There are certain things like the pilot is reflexes and other things, but there are other things that you are still very competent at. I mean, a board on a bank and some of the other things that they have these age requirements, I think, are a little bit insane and inane. But that's just my opinion on that.
That's your opinion. My opinion is, as you get older, you need to train and support the younger generation to come up and take your place. It is ethically and morally not sound and should be illegal for guys like Joe Biden to run, frankly, Donald Trump to run, and frankly, Dianne Feinstein and Nancy Pelosi to be in Congress. You know, and Mitt Romney said the right thing. He goes, we're getting too old. We need the next generation to take over. And you know, the worst thing is we're pinning the bill on the next generation with the debt so high, Social Security going bankrupt, Medicare going bankrupt. The people are listening to the show today. Your odds-on favorite, you will see in your lifetime, Social Security going broke and Medicare going broke. Odds-on in your lifetime, you're going to look for the U.S. government to bail them out. The U.S. government is broke.
Well, since we're the World Show, I just thought I'd do a quick. This was the World Show. I thought I'd do a contrast. Apparently, Joe Biden is the oldest American president having entered office at age 78, as well as the only U.S. president to turn 80 while in office and all in that space. And definitely, Trump is not a spring chicken either, but national leaders range in age from the mid 30s to 90. So the youngest head of government from whom an exact date of birth can be found is Gabriel Boric of Chile, who is 37, and the current leader of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traore, was younger than Boric, but is not concluded in this analysis because his exact date of birth could not be obtained. He's either 34 or 35, but that is some of those that are in that space. But we got a lot of folks like Jinping, is 69, Paul Biya of Cameroon is 90, and even the person we've been talking about, Mr. Putin, is 70. So the median age of the current national leaders is 62. When grouped by decades, the largest share of global leaders today are in their 60s. Roughly a quarter are in their 50s, while 18% are in their 40s or 70s. So definitely Biden is among the 5% of leaders who are in their 80s. So there's a bunch of folks that are running countries at older ages, and sometimes they are even respected as leaders because of their age and everything. So I don't know what y'all's thoughts are about that, but there's some folks that are running countries that are older.
62 is an 82. Can tell you that right now.
Well, I mean, you talk about trusting the younger generation. The younger generation, they're a bunch of narcissistic, entitled, lazy people who have no respect for authority or this country's history, raised by parents who accidentally, apparently, had children and decided not to be parents. And I think we're failing to look at the bigger problem. The bigger problem is democracy itself. You guys probably believe in the right to vote, which I think is absolutely absurd. I don't believe in the right to vote. I believe in the right of intelligent people to vote. I don't believe the high school jock who smokes weed and is obsessed with the captain of the cheerleading team should be voting. I don't think members of the KKK should be voting. I mean, democracy just allows idiots to elect leaders. What we need is a benevolent dictatorship or an epistocracy.
Hey, what do you think about?
You and Plato
hold on a second. What do you
And
think
Mr.
about
Putin, I
leaders?
want to tell you how much we respect. What?
What do you think about women leaders that are younger? Because apparently women leaders tend to be younger than the man leaders. And although only 13 countries currently have a woman in top office, the median age of these women is 57 compared to 62 for the national leaders who are men. And they've got some interesting things. I think it was last week's show. We talked about Finland and how they are doing really well. But apparently their prime minister, Sanna Marin, is the youngest woman in power at 37, having been sworn in when she was 34, and there are 5 other women leaders in their 40s. Mette Frederiksen of Denmark, Kaja Kallas of Estonia, Katrin Jakapadir of Ireland, and Giorgia Meloni of Italy, and Anna Brnabic of Serbia. So apparently some of these leaders are actually in the Eastern Europe theater and all in that space, but looks like they might be more keen to letting women vote and even having some young leaders as well that are women. So what are our thoughts about women leadership?
I think women are outstanding leaders because they tend to be more conscientious than men. They tend to be more attentive to detail than men. They tend to be more mature than men, as empirical studies show. But when it comes to Finland, there's one reason. There's one reason why Finland is one of the greatest countries in the world and one of the happiest, and it's very simple. It is because every day they wash their windows. Everybody in the community washes their windows. And why do they do that? They do that because they take pride in where they live. And they take pride in how their communities look. And when you do that, you build a community and you reduce crime to near zero. They take pride in what they do. In the United States, we don't seem to take pride in anything except Instagram, Facebook, vilifying Donald Trump, and allowing some high school moron who thinks that a Milky Way bar is a dietary product to vote. I mean, I don't understand how you guys believe in the right to vote. I think it's ridiculous, and immediately we need to start really disenfranchising millions of people.
So how would you get rid of the right to vote? Because they want more people to vote, and they actually want mail-in ballots and everything of that nature. So we're just going to go to a elite nature and all of this place, so only the elite get to vote and everything. So are we just going to have the ruling elite that are the aristocrats that are the ones that are voting? I think we tried that in some of the European countries, but how is this going to work?
Look at how in Russia. Look at the people in Russia, how happy they are. Because, I mean, if I see you're marching in a KKK rally, you lose your right to vote. If I see you hurling racist, sexist, homophobic slurs, you lose your right to vote. And generally, if you're a jerk, you lose your right to vote. And if you're completely ignorant on any type of policy and don't know anything, and you think that Judge Judy is a Supreme Court justice, you don't get the right to vote either. I'm against the right to vote, and I think we've taken constitutional rights and liberty way too far. The less liberty, the less choices you have, the happier you are. That is an empirical fact. We should have less choices, less freedom, and we're going to be happier.
That'll get you elected, Adam. That'll put you right up in the front center of that. But you actually do have a point. And Plato actually did agree with you that why is it that one person, one vote? Now, I'll also tell you this: in corporate America, you don't have the right to vote unless you own stock, and you get more votes if you own more stock. So the thing is, it's a whole different system. So in corporate America, we actually operate on a meritocracy. If you're willing to put the money up, you put a lot of money up, you get a lot of votes for the board of directors and who's the president, who's going to run the company. Okay, but now when we go to our country, it isn't. Any Tom, Dick, and Harry's vote is equal to a person who has a lot of information vote. So it's kind of one of the things that are out there, including the Second and First Amendment, that need to be redone. But I don't think that's going to happen in our lifetime. Eventually, it will, because remember, felons don't have the right to vote. Think about it.
Well, hold on a second, because there's been a notion of the
right to vote. It should be a privilege.
there's been a notion of the gamification of the world. So what's going to happen when we get to the point that the entire voting system is done online and all in that space? And then we'll have like what people have said they want, which is 100% voting record. But like to your point, and I agree with you, Adam, that a lot of folks don't need to be voting because they don't have any idea what they are voting for, and that's on both the local and the national levels and everything. But with this whole gamification notion, couldn't it be possible that we're going to see some of this sci-fi notion where everybody goes in there, they get on their little computer, they get on their phone, and they turn in their vote, and maybe it's like a popularity club from your favorite high school or college that you went to, and all in that space? But how is this going to not happen? Because I do have a feeling that this could happen sooner versus not happening, because a lot of people are looking at mail-in voting, they're looking at electronic voting, they're looking at a number of other voting systems to make it easier. But on the flip side of that, we're restricting voting because they definitely are doing ID checks and a number of other things to make sure that you are who you say you are, and all in that space. So
you need a license to drive, so you should need a license to vote. You should have a basic understanding of the government, and you should have moral character. And if you don't have neither or both, you shouldn't vote. And I may even say the board of directors generally shouldn't vote either, because board of directors they're people who sit there and say yes, 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 yes to whatever the CEO wants. And as far as the First Amendment goes, I think Nick's right. I'd burn the First Amendment. In fact, I proposed a book burning ceremony at my college because I wanted to burn pornography, violent video games, and all the things in this country that are undermining our values and corrupting our youth, including that book, 50 Shades of Grey. And I think we need to get back to a society where if you want to have liberty and freedom and democracy, you also have to have responsibility, intelligence, and commitment to certain values. You can't have one without the other.
Hey, Adam, who picks the book? Because I've seen some book bans where Curious George was banned. I personally like Curious George.
I love Curious George. Well, I'm going to burn pornography, violent video games, all those slasher horror movies from the 80s, things that have no social, literary, or scientific value. And I'm going to, prohibit people from making racist, sexist, homophobic comments to others. I want a society based on virtue. When you're in Singapore, where they have a benevolent dictator, there's flowers on the street all over the place when you drive to work. It's so clean. People are so decent. Here, go to San Francisco, you see the opposite. Our democracy is crumbling because our people are not meeting the requirements of an informed citizenry.
But I have to play devil advocate here to some degree and everything. What you were proposing, some people would point back to poll taxes and wonder how you are going to administer it and how the test would be done. Are we giving everybody a citizenship test like the new immigrants have to do? You have to pass the test based on your high school and college training and all along those lines, and not everybody went to college.
No, what we're going to do is we're going to mail small little booklets to every citizen that contain information like how many branches of government there are, who was the president in the last 3 elections, and we're going to have a quiz. And then we're going to have a moral character certification. where you have to certify under penalty of perjury that you're not a racist, that you're not a sexist, that you're not a homophobic jerk, that you have a modicum of knowledge about public policy issues. And if you fail the test, just like if you fail the driving test, because you can't parallel park, well, you can't vote. If you think that Judge Judy
coming back to the sexist notion, that can be subjective, because you're going to have some folks that if you look at a woman a certain way, they may consider that to be sexist, and there will be others that will be wanting to see some more specific examples of sexism, because this comes down to that method of definitions and all along those lines. Because I do know
I don't need to see examples of it. You just have to certify. I'm going to have a form where you certify that you're not these things under penalty of perjury and imprisonment. Then you're going to have to know how many members are on the U.S. Supreme Court. Where is the White House? Is it in Washington, D.C. or Wisconsin? And you have to have a certain level of knowledge that the high school weed smoking jock doesn't get to vote. The KKK doesn't get to vote. And you're trying to narrow it down so that people who care about our country and have at least a minimal knowledge of politics can make informed choices. Like Nick could vote. Mark could vote.
I might be privileged enough to vote. Might be. I might get the number on the Supreme Court wrong, but other than that, that's only because they haven't expanded the Supreme Court, which they should have done.
Right, but David Duke doesn't get to vote.
What?
David Duke doesn't get to vote.
Yeah, David Duke should be tossed. But making voting a privilege rather than a right would be a very interesting and radical concept, having voting rights rather than privileges. But now let's get back to your friend, the Donald. You said on a previous show that Donald Trump will be the next president of the United States. Well, and since then our ratings went way up. I mean, literally, I don't know what's going on. Even the rebroadcasts have been pulling in thousands and thousands of people. So it's almost like you invoke the name of Donald Trump, and all of a sudden it's like, you ever see dung and flies? They go together. Well, Trump is the dung of politics, and he brings the flies in. So what are your thoughts now that another week has passed? Will Donald Trump be the president of the United States, or is he going to fall into the political trap of getting incarcerated?
Well, first of all, if Donald Trump is ever among those thousands that are watching this broadcast, call me, because I'm a great lawyer and you need legal assistance. I'm happy to help you.
He needs a lot of assistance.
I think Donald Trump becomes the next president because I think that people are so disillusioned with our institutions, and they are particularly disillusioned because the indictments against Trump are so politically motivated. And that's going to create a huge backlash. I also think under Trump, we had the lowest African-American Hispanic employment rate. We had a secure border, a better economy, lower gas prices. Supreme Court justices actually interpreted the Constitution. Life was better under Trump than it is under Biden. And when you combine that with the absolutely incessant attempt to destroy this man's life and character, that creates a backlash that's going to lead to a higher turnout. And turnout is going to be big in this election. I think Trump wins. I think the indictments fizzle out. And I think we get back to the path of making America great again.
Okay, that sounds reasonable, but I just have one question for you, so I'm going to add this to the question list. How do you address this? 25% of all national debt was acquired under your friend Donald Trump.
Why did that happen?
I'm not asking why. I'm just saying it happened. Okay, so how do you defend a guy that has done this to our country? 25% of all national debt acquired under Trump.
For the same reason that I defended Bill Clinton. Yes, Bill Clinton had oral sex in the Oval Office with Monica Lewinsky, but you don't judge someone based on one thing. People are complicated and multifaceted. They do good things, they do bad things. Clinton did more good things than bad things. Trump did more good things than bad things. And Nick, I'm surprised at you because I would think, you're going to get even wealthier under Trump. You should be thrilled.
Well, I mean, that would be a very self-centered thing, but I'm looking for the country as a whole, how well they would do under a guy who acquires.
You already have the precedent. You have the precedent from 2016, 2020. They were doing better.
but it's
Hey,
worse than you think.
one second. I
He
got
has a
another question for
history
y'all.
of bankrupting companies, a history of it.
Speaking
Not
of
like
bankrupting, I've got a question for both of you and everything, and it's
he does
based
this
on
all
what
the
Tim
time.
Scott said, because Tim Scott was asked about the auto walkout, because that's something that's going on with the United Auto Workers and everything, and he took a very harsh stance of that, and he actually praised Reagan's firing of workers. I believe that was the air traffic controllers, if I remember correctly, and everything. But should we have presidents and presidential candidates, should they be elected? And I don't think Tim Scott has much chance of being elected, but should they be thinking about dismissing folks from their jobs? Because I do remember that incident when Reagan did that. And I think, like I said, maybe we have him going out there and firing the UAW, the SEJ, the Screen Actors Guild, and a number of other folks that are threatening or are doing the strike. So, Adam, what are our thoughts about Tim Scott praising Reagan's firing of the workers? And I'm pretty sure that was the air traffic controllers.
I don't necessarily agree with Tim Scott, and I don't really think about him because although I think he's a good man, a smart man, I don't think he has any chance about being president. What I think, the reason I think Trump is going to be president at the end of the day is because the average person looks at Donald Trump and says, "My life was better under Trump. Trump is authentic. Trump is doesn't BS. Trump is not part of the swamp. And with Trump, we're going to have a secure border, a better economy, lower gas prices." And just a better, and we're not going to get into any wars either. And I want to thank Trump publicly for what he's done for women, because that really is one of his biggest accomplishments. You know, Donald Trump, the majority of people that he employed in his companies were women. And the NAACP also gave him an award for his, for his accomplishments. And I just want to thank him for his altruism and for what he's done to diversify and increase women in the workforce. That's a leader, and that's what's going to make us great again.
Are you going to thank Epstein also, because he employed a lot of women also? This guy Jeff Epstein, I've never heard of him.
Oh, that's
So
terrible.
That's
Terrible.
Well, they were best friends, Nick. But Trump was, tried and accused, found guilty of sexual harassment. I mean, I don't think that was a fake. I think that there's plenty to go on. But I mean, I'm not going to say things were worse under Trump, but I personally did not feel they were better. I felt a lot of pressure from where I was at as far as the businesses that we were doing. I feel like that our society, because of the way our leadership was, has become more hateful towards each other. There is nobody trying to, calm down a situation. Everything escalates. Just like that situation in Birmingham, Alabama. They didn't even try to de-escalate the situation. Everybody escalates everything, one-ups everyone. I think it's poor quality leadership. I think there are people out there, Adam, who can make America just as good with their business sense and common sense and be ethical and have good etiquette. And inspire good attitude. But Biden is
You're
just
looking at him.
Oh, well, Adam, we know you're going to be president soon. We're looking at Adam Lambert as president.
I would vote
for Adam today. I would vote for Adam right now.
Adam's got some good things, and he can definitely don't agree with all his politics. But I did have a quick question for you as we're winding down this show. We'll be back on Thursday with more world politics. But Adam, is DeSantis toast? Is he done? Because I do see that there is urgency for folks in his campaign, and there's definitely a lot of scrambling going on in Iowa and all in that, and he spent a whole lot of money in Iowa, and definitely maybe he'll be running back to Florida and everything. But is he toast? Is he going to be the next one to drop out? What are your thoughts about DeSantis?
He's toast because he did not run an effective campaign, and he has not come off well publicly. He's toast. Trump's going to be the nominee, and under Trump's presidency, the relations with Russia are going to improve, and we're going to welcome Mr. Putin to New York City. Just like we welcome Mr. Gorbachev to New York City.
That's right. Yeah, like
Just
Neville
like we welcome
Chamberlain.
Mr. Gorbachev, that fine man, and we are going to recognize that Russia is a partner.
Fine man Hitler, said Neville Chamberlain. Fine man Hitler, said Neville Chamberlain.
If you listen to the Russian national anthem, how could you not be inspired?
I listened to the German national anthem, and boy, I was inspired too. And so were all the Germans.
Oh, that's terrible. How
when they
insulting.
attacked Russia. He should be
I think
inspired.
that Trump might have good relations with Putin. I don't know, but I don't want to be serving under Putin. So I'm hoping that I just don't like that relationship. I really, really don't think that that would be good for us. But I mean, who knows? I think that there's got to be somebody else. It's very sad to me that we haven't expanded and broadened our options any better than this. And I agree. I think DeSantis was a poor choice to begin with. I just,
Yeah, he was a poor choice. Adam, you're going to
Did
love
anyone hear Trump's speech the other day?
Well, he's supposed to be doing a speech.
He loves to call people names,
It must have been excellent.
He loves, God, no, he's got a red button that he wants to push. Because his is bigger than Biden's. It was all playground. And he's got a name for DeSantis, and I forget what it is, but
Sanctimonious.
The Sanctimonious. You got that right, the Sanctimonious. And he now calls Hillary beautiful Hillary, and I'm like, oh my God. Is she campaigning with him?
Possibly.
No.
They were good
They
friends.
also have to thank Donald Trump, because Donald Trump, was bridging relations with North Korea and our friend Kim Jong-un. And I thought that was special. He went to North Korea.
Hey, Adam, I know we're winding down, but you're going to love this.
He wants to build condos there.
Hunter Biden has some very interesting allies, because apparently black taxpayers were being audited around 3 to 5 times the rate of other taxpayers, according to a January study from Stanford University and the Treasury Department economists. So the roots may lay in the IRS algorithms. Gotta love those algorithms.
That's
and
terrible.
Everything. So there is actually going to be the IRS is changing its audit methods to reduce racial disparity, according to their own commissioner. So maybe this is going to be the African American community and Hunter Biden, because I know Hunter Biden also wants to sue the IRS, getting into a conversation and everything. But the IRS,
my words, Trump gets 25% of the African American vote, and for good reason. He was a great president for African Americans. Biden isn't, and these disparities have to stop. Just terrible.
Are you his campaign manager or something?
No, I would like to run myself, because I think I could beat him.
Yeah. Well, we'll put you in the next poll, because Steve pulled 9%, almost 10%, but Trump just
the next poll is coming out later on this evening.
And that Mitt Romney should be ashamed of himself for those comments, saying a younger generation should take. How dare you?
Well, younger generation is talking about
must
you.
Be bitters. What?
He's talking about you being the younger generation.
Well, he's from Utah.
You fit the younger generation bills. You really do. I mean, I think that with a younger person in place, maybe somebody with a little bit of a technical understanding of what we can and cannot do to help engineer some of the things that we need to do going forward. I think that's going to be very important, especially with the change and what's coming down the road using technology. There's just so many things we could get rid of the IRS, put everything on blockchain. We can get rid of all of health insurance and put it on blockchain. Doctors would be paid straight through. Well, I mean, there's so many things we could be doing that would improve the lives, the quality of life for the U.S. citizens. We could, instead of catch and release the gang members, that they have been catching them, but unfortunately they have to release them because they have.
According to Adam, we all got to go and I actually have a couple of friends that do this job on a regular basis. I have at least 2 friends that I know do this work. But according to you, Adam, we all have to go out and clean windows and everything, because I do have a couple of friends that do that whole squeaky thing with the corporate windows around Durham and all along those lines.
The key to happiness, and Finland shows it. If everybody washes their windows every morning, the community is going to look beautiful.
Make your bed. Make your bed every day.
Take pride in your community. I think Kim's right about a younger person. I do agree with that. And if I get elected president, Kim, you'll be Secretary of the Interior. Mark, you're going to be Chief of Staff. And Nick, we'll talk later.
Hey, I have this high-tech desk that goes up and down. This is really cool. It's electric.
I'll carry
on
it.
that note, we'll get ready to get on out of here. But just to let folks know, Adam will be one of the candidates on the poll that will be released later today or no later than tomorrow. But in the first week's poll, the results are in, and we have a nice little combination of candidates. So Lee Newton Rhodes, who's been in the background listening and watching, but did not chime in on this particular show, finished in a tie for third with Ron DeSantis. And our winner, at least in this opening poll, is none other than President Groucho, because definitely Groucho is the leading candidate and all in that space. So Oscar the Grouch won, and that's the Groucho that I was talking about. So Oscar the Grouch won with over 50% of the vote, and coming in second. So maybe Oscar the Grouch's vice president is going to be Nikki Haley. So it'll be Oscar the Grouch and Nikki Haley ticket, and all along.
I would also like to real quick congratulate Adam on becoming, I guess, the senator there at his university, and like to wish him well on that. So.
Are you on the faculty senate, Adam?
I am, yes, as of Friday.
As of Friday, he's on the faculty
tell
senate.
the other faculty members they should.
And we'll have to have him bring some interesting views. He kind of alluded to it, but we'll have to have some conversations and maybe even some debates, because I'm sure we may agree on parts of it, but disagree on parts of it. But apparently he had a wonderful conversation around the future of affirmative action as well. So maybe we'll find that tape or the copy of that whole discussion, because I'll be looking forward and seeing if I see him. But hopefully he'll be back on Thursday as well. So this has been another fun conversation, and we'll be back with World Politics again on Thursday. But you can hear the re-airs because Nick put them up during the course of the times that we're not on, and all in that space. But Adam, you and Taylor Swift are going to be going up against whatever two candidates. It might be Tim Scott and whoever else I pick on the next one. So you'll look to see how you do in the next poll that'll come out, like I said, either later on this evening or no later than first thing on Wednesday. So we're going to see how you do in round two. And maybe Nick and Kim, should we eliminate folks? Because we're eliminating folks, then we are eliminating DeSantis and Lee Newton Rhodes this time around. So
I would just put Adam with Trump and Biden. Put Adam with Trump and Biden.
Yeah, just Trump and Biden for now.
And that's me and I'll
let's do Taylor later.
Yeah,
no, we already promised Taylor, so it's going to be Adam,
be
Taylor.
Closer. Taylor can be and do it. What name would go?
Yes, it's four. So it's Adam. It's Adam, Taylor, and I don't know. We should do both Trump and Biden. So I'll probably do Trump this time and Tim Scott.
Okay.
Okay, because I just think that the DeSantis is gone. So
yeah, DeSantis is totally gone. He's eliminated now.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you.
All right, we'll see you next week.
See you all Thursday.
Thank you.
Later on this week. All right.
Bye.